Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is ShinoDBD, your gaming and anime ninja, and welcome to Shino's Shrine Picks. So for those of you guys who don't know what this is, because this is only my second time doing it, this is basically the series or video where I go over what's currently in the Shrine of Secrets, what perks I think are worth picking up, what perks I think might be best just left for another time, and what perks, or I guess what perks would be best to use with these if you were to run these perks. Alright, first up, we have Flip Flop. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Flip Flop is a perk that comes from Ashley J. Williams, aka our boy Ash. It's essentially an anti-slugging perk. Basically, while you're recovering on the ground, it increases whatever you've recovered, gets added to your wiggle bar. So if you recover up to 50% and the killer slugs you or doesn't immediately pick you up, whatever you've recovered will now be your wiggle, so it makes it more likely to be able to wiggle out of the killer's grasp. I think this perk is actually pretty good. Unfortunately, it's not super popular, but I think it can actually be really strong, especially if you know you're playing against a killer who likes to slug, or if you're just playing a lot at rank 1. Perks I think that run really well with this, in my opinion, would be things like Tenacity, Unbreakable, Decisive Strike, arguably even No Mither, although that's a doubtful one. And lastly, another perk that actually I think works really well with this is another perk that's also in the Shrine, which would be Kate's Boil Over. Ideally, this perk, you want to use it when you get slugged, when you get left on the ground, and you want to use it as say an opportunity to be able to get up before the killer gets you to a hut. Unfortunately, it's really hard to know if killers are going to slug. Nurses are pretty commonly do it, hillbillies pretty commonly do it. The other thing though is if they know or once they realize you have perks like this, like Unbreakable, like D-Strike, or like Flip Flop, they're a lot less likely to slug you, so they become a lot harder to use. But if you're playing a game where you're in a situation where you're getting slugged a lot, it can be a really strong perk. My biggest problem with this perk, or any perk like this in particular, is that it's just way too situational. It's a perk that counters a very specific killer playstyle, and unless there's a season or a meta in which that just becomes a very prominent playstyle for killers, it's very unlikely that you'll get to use the perk consistently. A lot of times it'll end up being just Unbreakable, which I would say is a stronger version of this perk, but basically it ended up being Unbreakable, in which you get to recover, but you never get to use it versus half the killers you play against because they don't slug you. And then the moment you take the perk off, of course you get slugged because that's just the way the world works, right? At the end of the day, I don't think it's a bad perk. I think it's a pretty good perk overall. A decent perk overall, but it's just far too situational for me to actually recommend people grabbing or picking up in your build. Unless you're doing specific Sabo builds, or you just happen to know that you're going to be playing against people who slug you. Say you're in a tournament scenario, or maybe you just know that someone's got it out for you for the night. And next up, we've got Beasts of Prey. Now, I actually really like this perk, and I think this perk could actually be incredibly strong on the new Freddy after his rework. It could also do relatively well with Huntress, and also Forever Tier 1 or Forever Tier 2 Myers. This perk can be extremely good. Actually, not Forever Tier 1 Myers anymore, because Forever Tier 1 Myers no longer gets Bloodlust, so unfortunately you can't use it on him, unfortunately. But it does work wonders, I think, on Forever 2 Tier Myers, especially if you're running Dead Rabbit or any of the other perks with him. That being said, this can be really good for stealth builds if you're playing killers who run more of a stealthy style. This could also work really well with, say, people like Ghostface. But the point of this perk is essentially make it a lot easier for you to mind game people who are basically pallet looping or different pallet loops or loops run. The reason why I say this perk is probably especially strong on Freddy is because once you gain Bloodlust, if you're inside the dream, Freddy no longer has a directional terror radius. All you have is Freddy's Lullaby. So without having any form of directional terror radius and only having the Lullaby, if he gets Bloodlust and losing his red stain, it would probably be way easier to catch survivors. And so I just think it'd probably be monumentally powerful on him simply for the fact that he doesn't have a normal terror radius. But realistically, following that basic logic, any killer who can get rid of or displace their terror radius, which multiple killers can with different perks these days, can make use of this perk during a chase. Ultimately, I think it's a fun perk to use. I wouldn't necessarily call it necessary. Again, it might be extremely strong on Freddy Krueger, but outside of Freddy, I can't see it being like overpowered or something that everybody should run in particular builds. And realistically, I can't think of too many perks that really synergize with it. Usually when I look for perk synergy, I look for perks that essentially have two different powers that complement each other. There's no real perks that really complement this one, except for maybe the perk that reduces your terror radius from Ghostface. I can't remember the name of the perk off the top of my head because it's so new at this point, but that perk might work relatively well with synergizing with it. And I would like to say that Monitor and Abuse could, but the problem is Monitor and Abuse kind of works in direct contrast of this, because Monitor and Abuse doesn't activate, or when you're in a chase, Monitor and Abuse increases your terror radius, and when you're like activating Bloodlust, the red stain disappears. I think situationally, having the increased terror radius and like having people not know exactly where you are, know if you're really close or really far, and then also having like your red stain disappear could be useful. But I'd have to actually see it in action and use it in action to really be able to get behind that. Either way, it's a good perk to pick up, especially if you're a Freddy main, because it's going to be really strong on Freddy. But outside of that, it's only something fun to play with, and I personally would need some more time with it before I could really say it's like the perk to have or the best one. Alright, Hangman's Trick. Your ingenious modifications to hooks prevents tampering and help prevent permanent damage. Hooks destroyed by sabotaging or sacrifice repair automatically after 30 seconds. And you get a notification when someone starts saboting hooks. Also, sabotage bear traps have their repair time or the automatic repair time reduced by 6. I have no idea why this is in the pigs book or in the pigs like tool set, because it doesn't work at all with her power. I feel like maybe if you could sabotage the pig's traps to make them quicker or something like that, maybe you could understand this, but I have no idea why this became a thing. I just assumed that this just ended up becoming a thing as a way for them to fit in a response to people still complaining about Sabo, which is silly, but I digress. Ultimately, this perk isn't strong. I don't mean to say that it's completely useless. There are some maps in which it can be useful. If you know you're getting sent to Haddonfield a lot, there's not a lot of hooks there. So losing some key hooks due to people saboing or just due to you killing people on a certain side of the map and not having those hooks available at all anymore can be a little bit of a pain to deal with. And to be honest, about the only real benefit of this perk is the fact that it'll repair sacrifice hooks. Normally when you sacrifice the survivor on a hook, it never comes back. If you're running this trick, if you're running this perk, even this hook will come back, which can be useful on certain maps, but again, it's so situational that I can never think of a situation outside of maybe playing Trapper where I wanted this perk, right? And even when I'm playing Trapper, as nice as this perk would be to have as like a quality of life thing, I've never been in a situation where I felt I needed the perk. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the only way I'd recommend this perk is if you're in some sort of competitive or tournament setting, or for whatever reason you're getting sniped by somebody, or however you shakes out that you just know that you're going to be going up against a Sabo squad. This perk was pretty much created to hard counter Sabo squads. It makes it extremely hard, if not impossible, to sabotage hooks or use Sabo as a strength against killers. So I guess if you see 4 toolboxes and you're pretty sure that they're going to go for the Sabo play and not go for the unhook play, then yeah, go for it. This will be the one to use, but otherwise, I just don't really see this being as a necessary perk. It's just something maybe kind of fun to play with. And again, I would say maybe tournament settings, but then thinking about it now, if you're in a tournament, you're probably doing a kill your friends style thing. And if you're doing kill your friends, you have every perk unlocked anyway, so you don't have to have, you don't have to have Hangmans Trick or have this perk from the shrine in order to use it. So I would say wait on this one for sure. All right, lastly, in the shrine on the survivor side, we've got Kate's Boilover. So for those who don't know who Boilover does, basically as a battler you struggle with everything you have to essentially prevent the killer from being able to get you on the hook, or basically fight really hard to keep the killer out, to keep the killer from getting you onto the hook, which can be really useful. Ideally, basically just makes it so you wiggle more, so it's a lot harder for the killer to move you around. Think of it kind of like a counter Iron Grass, if you will. Kind of like the exact opposite of what Iron Grass does. The other thing that the perk is really good for is that while you're struggling, it removes or hides any hooks when you get picked up that are within a certain radius for you. I believe at rank 1 it's at 10 yards. I'm gonna double check right now because I believe at the final rank it's much higher, but I'm not sure if it's 20 or 15. So I just want to double check that real quick. 14, so it's not too far, but 14 yards. So it makes it so you wiggle 75% more. So you're basically what the struggle effects mean is that the killer feels you're wiggling 20% or 75% more than they normally do, and on top of that, you basically, when you're picked up, the killer is not able to see hooks within 14 meters. To my understanding, it doesn't always obscure these hooks. I could be wrong. It might always obscure the hooks auras. I think to my experience, that it's only obscured it when picked up, because I've been able to see hooks outside of it. But once you're in line of sight of the hook, you don't see the aura anymore anyway. So I'm not positive of that. But I digress. Perks that I think that are really good with boil over, in my personal opinion, would be Unbreakable, Flip Flop, Decisive Strike. Essentially boil over is like, it's supposed to be kind of like like if you know they're slugging or if you think they're going to be slugging. It's also really strong if you're playing with anyone who's running Sabo builds, or if you're ever running a Sabo squad. Running boil over, or having the team run boil over to help to make, buy their team a little bit more time for them to Sabo hooks and things like that can be really strong. But outside of that, is not like incredible. Like the main thing here is that it helps prevent the killer from just having an easy time getting into a hook. And so this is obviously going to be really good if the killer's going to be leaving you on the ground. The reason why I say flip flop works really well with it is the simple fact that, like, if you get any time to recover because he slugs you or anything else, you can use boil over to like wiggle more and just kind of make the most of the extra time that you gain to flip flop. All right. So now we're at the part of the video where I'm supposed to give you guys my opinions on what perk I think is best, or what are the perks that are worth running. And if I'm 1000% honest, in today's Shrine of Secrets, I would probably skip everything except for Beasts of Prey. This is like a rough one, but after about 2 hours of trying out Flip Flop and Boil Over in different combinations together, I don't think I managed to wiggle out a single time. Again, I think these perks could be really good in like a Sabo scenario, but there are so few solo scenarios, even when like giving yourself the optimal like situations in which these perks will actually help you survive. In the 10 to 15 times that I tried to wiggle out, I actually didn't wiggle out once, no matter like if there were hook offerings, if I did like Sabo, if I made sure like I crawled really far away. Even in the one situation out of all of them that I was able to actually recover up to 99%, none of those situations I was ever able to successfully use Flip Flop or Boil Over to actually escape alive. Obviously this is like, a short 2-hour session at rank 1, but I mean, this is me playing at rank 1, trying the perks out, trying a bunch of different builds. It should synergize with them, and it's not that the perks that I used didn't have synergy with them, it just didn't matter. With the amount of buffs that, or I should say nerfs, that Killer or the devs have given Sabotage over the years, and I guess buffs in terms of killer hooks, being able to pick up survivors faster, having more hooks, having the hooks spawn closer together, and all of those things, nothing except something purely coordinated can make any of these perks actually viable in like a high rank setting. Even in a low rank setting, I feel like more often than not a killer's going to see a hook without really needing to see its aura. The only maps I can think of where this might be a little bit more useful would probably be Haddonfield or like Leary's, a map where the hooks might not be readily apparent because they're on the other side of walls. But outside of that, like, the perk was, in my opinion, a complete waste of time to use, and I don't recommend, except for the fact that you can't get Ash without buying them and you can't get Kate's perks without buying them. I don't recommend any of these perks. I wouldn't use them in high tier play. I wouldn't use them in low tier play. I would only maybe recommend memeing with them as friends. And since both of those perks are kind of out of the window, all that really does is leave us with the killer perks, in which case we've got Beasts of Prey and Hangman's Trick. And as I said, with the whole purpose of these, literally with none of the killers I was playing against running Hangman's Trick, not once was I able to make use of Flip Flop or Boil Over. So unless you specifically know you're being sniped, or you're going to be playing against someone who's sabotaging, Hangman's Trick does absolutely nothing to help you. And realistically, with the current Sabo strategies, Hangman's Trick isn't even really that useful except for letting you know that they're saboing hooks. Because generally the current Sabo meta, for those who do sabotage, is to 99 the hooks until you're about to try to use them and then sabotage them. In which case that 30-second time is nice in the sense of your hooks won't be gone for super long, but realistically, your hooks aren't coming back either way. Like, you know what I mean? Your hook's still gone when you need it based on how they should be playing the Sabo game. So that being said, Hangman's Trick, kind of useless. Flip Flop and Boil Over, completely and totally useless. If you had to pick one of the two, I'd say go with Boil Over, because you'll probably get a little bit more use out of that than you will out of Flip Flop. And last thing, the only one that I think it could possibly be usable or even like viable at higher ranks would probably be Beast of Prey. And I would imagine that Beast of Prey is probably extremely strong on Freddy Krueger. But either way, that's my thoughts on this week's Shrine of Secrets. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys want to talk to me about perks, talk to me about builds, or come up with some cool perk and build ideas that you guys have, or have me try them out or show them to me, you can find me. I stream just about every night on Twitch TV. You can find a link in the description below, or you can, you know, type in the thing that's flying across the screen right now. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, my name's ShinoDBD, your gaming anime ninja, and I'll catch you guys later, alright? Deuces.